Hey y'all, it's your girl Chef Kyra and welcome back to another episode of New York Eats. Welcome to my food channel where we talk about everything nice, sugar and spice, baby. So I know many of you have been wondering like, okay, when are we gonna get the next upload? But shorty ended up contracting a cold, not COVID, a cold, let's be clear. He said I just wanted to take some time off and yeah, just be energetic, because I did like pre-record and I had already had footage for today's video, but after reviewing it last night and looking at my demeanor, my makeup, all of that, it wasn't hitting for me. So I decided to re-record and give you guys better content because that's what you deserve. And yeah, so let's just get into it. So for today's episode, we're gonna talk about the movie The Menu, y'all. I am so excited to give you guys a chef's perspective breakdown on this movie. We're gonna review all of the different characters and some monumental scenes that are in the movie. Now, even if you're not a chef, I highly recommend watching this movie. It's just, I mean, it's really intriguing. So what I would do is maybe watch the movie and then end up watching this review, or vice versa. But whatever you do, definitely check out this review that I'm giving you guys today, because it's definitely going to give you a different perspective on the movie. And yeah, let's just get into it. So the first thing that we're going to start off is talking about some of the characters that are really important in the movie. First two characters I want to start off with is Tyler and Margot. Tyler is the food enthusiast and Margot is a worker, as you can see, a specific kind of work. Next two characters I want to talk about is Lillian and Ted. Lillian is one of the food critics and she is also the person that put Chef Slowick on the map for his restaurant, and Ted is just one of the magazine personnel. We have Damien and Felicity. Damien is the movie star and Felicity is his assistant. Now we have the infamous couple, Richard and Annie. Richard is a very wealthy man and so is his wife, being that he's wealthy, and they're just the rich couple. So next up we have the rich guy trio, which is Soren, Dave and Bryce. These three guys are a part of the company that funded Chef Slowick's restaurant. And yeah, it gets pretty interesting, y'all. Linda, who is Chef Slowick's mother, she is definitely, I don't know, I mean, I would consider her a mute pretty much the whole movie. And also she is a drunkard, because all throughout the movie the girl was just asking for another glass of wine, which I don't blame her because wine is really good. So of the hour we have Chef Slowick, who is the owner and executive chef of the restaurant. Elsa, who is Chef Slowick's right hand man and also the hostess. So she is just the second person that's like really in control over, you know, the disaster that ends up coming on later on in the movie. Jeremy and Catherine. Jeremy is the male sous chef and Catherine is the female sous chef. As many of you know, the name of the restaurant is Hawthorne and it's located on Hawthorne Island. Each guest must pay $1,250 per person to dine at this restaurant. And the restaurant also seats 12 people. Now, watching this movie from a chef's perspective, I'm definitely gonna categorize this restaurant as a farm to table Michelin star. I say Michelin star because of how pristine the kitchen is, and in real life when it comes to Michelin star restaurants, from what I understand, even though I haven't had the chance of working at a Michelin star, but from talking with other colleagues in the industry, it's a very high maintenance type of environment, from the guests that come in to the staff. And so this is why you see the pots are like absolutely gorgeous. I mean, there's no spots, no blemishes, not even on the chefs and their chef jackets. Everything is very clean, very precise, very organized. And although fine dining, you have a little bit more leeway of being, I guess, a little messy, but with Michelin star, like if you ever so much just drop, I don't know, like the skin of an onion on the floor, it needs to be picked up immediately because the kitchen is very, very pristine. I also categorize this restaurant as farm to table because of how they're sourcing their ingredients. All of their ingredients are being sourced from around the island. There is no purveyors such as Cisco or anything like that, or any made up purveyors in the movie that they're sourcing their ingredients from. And as the movie goes on, and in the very beginning, you see the person who is on a boat out in the ocean sourcing their scallops that they're gonna eat later on in the movie. So as the movie starts, guys, they are met at a dock. So all of the guests that are going to be dining at the restaurant that night end up, you know, meeting at the dock. The boat to get to Hawthorne Island ends up arriving. The first thing that they end up being able to experience and eat from Chef Slowick's creations is a oyster with a minuet and foam. I mean, just the food, photography, and cinema that is in this movie is just absolutely bananas. For me as a chef, I was just blown away. I absolutely loved it. So all of the characters are starting to get acquainted with each other as they're on a boat on their ride to Hawthorne Island. And then they get off the boat and everyone, you know, meets Elsa, who is, like I said, chef's do prep for so many hours before actually having diners come in, just so that the process of plating and getting the food out to you is much quicker and is expedient. They pass by Chef's cottage, and Elsa, with a very professional, aggressive, and sinister demeanor, says to all of the guests, no one has ever been into Chef's cabin, not even her. So, you know, that definitely says something, and it just alludes to the fact that there's something in Chef Slowick's cabin that I mean, that we all need to know about. My favorite food, granted, Chef made it very clear in the beginning, there are to be no pictures taken of any of Chef's creations for the night. Who else? And just, there was a couple of other things, but those were the three that like really stuck in my head. And I just thought that that was so cool. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. You know, next time, homegirl, if you catch a man cheating or whatever, make sure you snap that picture, take him out to dinner, and get you a 3D printer of him being out on the town. Alright, so let's get a little bit more into Chef and what he's about. So first off, Chef, I mean, whenever he enters the room to get everyone's attention before announcing the next course within their dinner, he just, I mean, his presence is very captivating, and he calls for your attention by just one simple loud clap, and everyone is just, I mean, shaken up by it. And when you look at his face, you can definitely see sadness in his eyes, and just like I said, you just get that sinister feeling from him. But you can tell that he also has a lot of great passion for the food that he presents within the movie. And one of his quotes that he says to the guests is, taste your food, don't just eat. And I think that that's something that is very, very true. And I think a lot of people, when they come into restaurants, you just scarf down the food. You don't necessarily take the time to, you know, really enjoy the food and really, you know, assess what you're eating. Pick up those different notes that you may be getting when you're tasting the food. So I love that about Chef Slowick, and it's something that I can definitely relate to as a chef and many other chefs around the world, because a lot of people don't truly understand how to, I guess, have the art of being able to properly eat food, especially when there's so much work that goes into it. Now, as time goes on, Chef continues to explain and give a little insight into his life, and explains the story about how his mother was strangled one night after fussing with the father about coming in drunk yet again for another night. Decides to take a pair of scissors and stabs his father in the thigh to prevent him from continuing to strangle the mother. And while he's telling this story, you can see that the mother is a mute, she's very slumped over. She doesn't have much of anything to say, and really the only thing that she does say is a little comment here or there, and also to raise her glass to get another glass. And I mean, it was just like, the creativity is just, it is beyond me. It really is. So, you know, you have that. Then later on in the movie, you begin to get a chance to see a little bit more into Chef Slowik's career-wise history. And this is because Margot ends up going to get the barrel that Chef requested her to go get, and she ends up running off into Chef's cabin, which, as you recall, no one, not even Elsa, who is Chef's right-hand man, is allowed in. So she goes in and begins to look around, and it's like she's in the same world that she was in while she was at the dining room, because Chef's living room is not a living room, or I guess his bedroom slash living room is not actually a bedroom slash living room. It's literally a mock-up or a replica of the actual restaurant. He has a bed within that area, and so then she goes and gets into another room that is within Chef's cabin, and there's multiple different pictures kind of basically telling the storyline of his career. And so of course it starts off with, you know, his accolades, being a well-known chef, receiving the awards that he has received for his cooking. And as the timeline of pictures goes on, it ends up landing on the part of when he first started cooking. And so Margot has the chance of being able to use this photo as her way to get out. And the photo shows him of when he first started and how he was working at a burger spot and flipping burgers. And you just saw how much joy he had cooking. And so with that part, it just shows how much, you know, just how much things change so much being a chef in the industry, and shows kind of like the timeline of how in the beginning you're so excited, you're ambitious, you're joyous, you're excited. There's just a spark about you, and as time goes on, you know, things begin to change, and you know, just the pressures of the industry, how you're being treated, maybe other chefs may have not treated you correctly, and that begins to dim your light and your passion for culinary, and you just end up becoming a shell of yourself and pretty much numb. So that is another element that is true to real life as far as being a chef, and I thought that it was just a really great element to add into it. That I like to talk about, which I thought was a really important message that the movie was conveying about what the reality of the industry is like, is the scene, the mess. So in this scene, the male sous chef has a chance to present one of his dishes that has been created by him, and in the end of it all, once the meal, quote unquote, is presented, his life in that scene. So for any of you who may be triggered by that, and have some things when it comes to that subject, I definitely would be very careful about watching that part of the movie, because it can be very triggering. But with all that being said, Chef ends up talking to Jeremy and has him in front of all of the guests, and he says to the guests, you know, Jeremy is really good, you know, he's very talented, but he's not great. And so that little clip and that little snippet right there is something that is a reality in the industry, where you have chefs that you're working under that are well known and that have a lot of accolades, and they'll do things to tear you down, and you know, kind of like, you know, say these things to keep you in place so that that person's place is never taken. And you know, it just shows the pressure of the industry and just how like taxing it can be mentally and emotionally. And then the other crazy part of about it is that Chef also mentions, as he's introducing Jeremy, and talks about how Jeremy ended up even being one of the chefs at Hawthorne, is that he came from the Culinary Institute of America, And if you don't know, the Culinary Institute of America is an actual school in real life. It's a culinary based school. It's one of the schools that is, I guess, what you would consider the creme de la creme of pursuing a culinary degree. And I've even taken a personal tour of the Culinary Institute of America in real life. And when I went in there, y'all, when I tell you that school, it's a private school, it's expensive. And as you get the tour, you are not allowed to take photos. You're not allowed to use your phone while during the tour, because they have cakes and different things that they enter into competitions, and they don't want any of their work being leaked out. But when I tell you, it is like a very extensive program, something that you would definitely want to be a part of. I mean, it's just amazing. I saw cakes that were just like, yo, this, I mean, there's no words. The amount of talent that is within the Culinary Institute of America is just mind-blowing. Jeremy, coming from that background, he sends a letter to Chef Slowick talking about how he is just so impressed with his work and would love to work under him. Chef Slowick makes it very clear, and you know, to the guests, to say that, you know, Jeremy wants my place and he wants to be able to walk in my shoes, but he's just not that great. He's not that, you know, good enough. And I also think that that also speaks to the aspect of, you know, students that come straight out of college, you know, they have, I guess, this very like uppity mindset where it's like, oh, I have my degree, this, that, and the third. And granted, yes, you know, being that you do have those credentials, that's all great and fine, but it's nothing compared to actually being in the industry and applying those things that you learned in school in real life. And so, you know, sometimes students feel like, oh, I could take your place and I could do a lot better than you because you're not doing it good enough, and you know, I have my degree, I have all these credentials, this, that, and the third. Also, another key element with Jeremy is that he was also at the beckoning call of Chef Slowick. When he went to have Chef Slowick taste one of the sauces that was being prepared for the next dish, it was just like he held his breath waiting for Chef Slowick's response. That is another key element, and something that actually does happen in the industry, where, you know, you kind of just like put your chef up on this altar and you're waiting for their beckoning call to let, you know, tell you like where you should be and what you should do and where you should go and what your status is and if you're good or not and what needs to be better. So, you know, like I said, with this movie, it definitely pulls a lot of key points about what the industry is truly like in real life. And I mean, they just did such a wonderful job, y'all. Now, I know it sounds a little crazy and y'all probably gonna be like, I don't know if I want to be subscribed to this girl channel no more. But another scene that I thought was really crazy and was just, I mean, it was good on like wordplay and all that, was when Richard and Annie tried to escape from the restaurant, and Richard says, oh, I'm going to handle it. And Elsa says to him, Richard, well, what hand would you like to handle this with? And so he goes, what do you mean? This doesn't make any sense. What do you mean, which hand would I like to handle it with? And so Elsa looks over to Chef, and they have this, just like I said, this like telepathic communication, and Chef Slowick, just with this sinister look on his face, gives Elsa the nod and says to have her proceed with what she was going to proceed with next. So she asks Richard again, Mr. Richard, what hand would you like to handle this with? And he goes, I don't know, what do you mean? This, that, and the third. And you know, he's all confused and whatnot. So then Elsa says to the team and everyone else that is helping orchestrate the monstrosity of this dinner night, and she says, left hand ring finger. And so then one of the chefs come out from the kitchen with a cleaver, and his left ring finger gets cut off clean. Now, if that is not the ultimate judgment for infidelity within your marriage, I don't know what is. And I just thought that scene was just, it was good. it was so good. And I know that sounds so bad of me to say that, but if you love horror movies, you love thriller movies, and just a little touch of comedy, this movie is definitely for you. So the next two people I want to talk about is Lillian and Ted. Lillian, like I said, she is the food critic, and she is just, I mean, she is just one of those people that's very, very like uppity, you know, one of those people that's posh, you know, one of those type of people. And she is just full of herself. So as she's, you know, sitting down dining, of course, as a food critic, yes, you're supposed to criticize the food, but Lillian has definitely, you know, taken it too far. She complains about the emulsification of the sauce, which is basically when you have emulsification, it is the process of mixing two liquids that don't necessarily mix together and making them work. So for example, we would use the emulsification process to make a vinaigrette or some form of salad dressing, because as we know, we have vinegar and oil, and they not gelling. So as a chef, we force them to blend. And so with that being said, when the sauce or whatever, you know, you have that you make ends up separating, you can see it in the sauce, and we have a trained eye for that. So Lillian makes the comment about how, you know, Chef Slowick should have his team together a lot more, because emulsification is like one of the most basic things, especially at that level. And she did have a point, because at that point with Michelin star, everything needs to be perfect, from your cuts to emulsification. Any techniques that is learned in the kitchen must be on point. But I also feel like her doing that just takes away from the fact of, you know, people being human, and that people make mistakes, and not everything is going to be perfect all the time. Although within the industry, we definitely strive for perfection. She takes her ability and her power to critique chefs in their restaurant and their food to the next level, and basically abuses her power. And with that being said, we have Ted, who is basically her accomplice. And Ted doesn't have a brain of his own. He doesn't have an opinion of his own. Anything that Lillian says, she agrees upon it. And they're just like the dynamic duo. And as you go on in the movie, and everything becomes a lot more dark and sinister, Chef Slowick comes over to the table, checks up on her, and asks her, well, how are you enjoying that broken sauce? Talking about the emulsification. And what is so clever, and I know every real chef in real life, when they have a guest who is just being obnoxious and complaining about food, would love to send out more and more of the thing that they're complaining about. So kudos to Chef Slowick for when he sent out a big bowl of the unemulsified sauce, which I thought was just perfect. It was brilliant. But he also comes over and says to her, Lillian, you have been the catalyst for my career, but you've also been the downfall for my career. And in the beginning, Lillian was just, you know, all for Chef, definitely making sure that she promotes him, promotes his restaurant, promotes his work. And now she is, I guess, struck with boredom when it comes to his food, and has a great lack of appreciation and isn't really impressed by his work. She also makes comments about how, oh, well, when is he gonna, you know, stop with this style of plating? It's, you know, just so mundane and blah, blah. And I just thought that that was just, you know, something that is a reality, because chefs that are chefs of Michelin star restaurants, they work so hard to get those stars and to even, I mean, be acknowledged or even considered. So the next person I wanted to talk about is Catherine, who is the female sous chef. In one of the scenes of the movie, they are brought outside to have a chance to run away and be able to escape the restaurant. With that being said, Catherine is left with all of the females, but prior to everybody getting a chance to run away, Catherine does a presentation, a short presentation, and as she's facing the guests, she explains to them that Chef Slowick has made multiple sexual advances towards her and was made to feel uncomfortable, and wanted an apology from Chef for his actions. And so in response to, you know, giving the apology that needs to be had, she takes a pair of scissors and stabs him in the thigh. And I guess it's just, you know, their way of squashing the beef. But the most important part that I wanted to talk about when it comes to that is the sexual advances. As a female chef and other female chefs that I've worked with and come across, sexual advances that are made by male chefs is a very, very real and prevalent thing in the industry. For me personally, I definitely feel like I have, you know, come into a situation wanting to work in the kitchen and, you know, wanting to be professional. And I get it. Men, you know, are visual creatures, and you find women to be attractive, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. But when there is a lack of professionalism and you're making someone feel uncomfortable, now it starts to lead into the point of sexual harassment, and it becomes a very toxic work environment. So like I said, for me personally, I have had chefs at the end of the night, you know, say certain things to me, and it's just like, but aren't you married? But shouldn't you not be doing that? And, you know, wanting to, as a female chef, to be taken seriously, and then to have your chef, you know, saying certain things to you, or, you know, having males in the industry that are, you know, higher up above you, and you're just trying to keep your professionalism and do your job and work your way up. And so then you also kind of have this feeling, and I feel like, you know, not me necessarily, but maybe other females, or just, you know, that are in the industry, have this feeling where it's like, okay, well, if I deny his sexual advances, you know, this man has the power to fire me, to demote me, and I don't want that. So you kind of go along with things so that you aren't losing your status within the kitchen realm and where you're trying to go with your career. Now, have I ever sold out for something like that? No, because I'm not on that type of time, and, you know, I let it be known, you know, what it is. So, you know, and I don't ever want to end up being that type of chef where, you know, I'm AKA sucking my way to the top. It's not a vibe. And at the end of the day, sweetheart, your mouth is gonna get tired someday. So, you know, there's that. Like, for both male and female chefs that are under, you know, an exec, have their place. I feel like males are I feel like when it comes to males, their plight is that they are definitely, you know, harped on a lot more. They're, you know, chefs are more strict on it, and they're not as easygoing when it comes to a female. And then I feel like the plights for females is just that we have to deal with sexual advances being made towards us. Lastly, we're gonna tie it up and finish it out with Margot and Tyler. Like I said, Margot is the sex worker, and Tyler is the food enthusiast, who is just, I mean, he's crazy. He really is. He's so, I mean, he puts Chef Slowick up on this really high pedestal. He is, I mean, just, I guess, drowning in Chef's work and what he does. And it's just, I mean, it's crazy. He is just, and I also feel like Tyler is the type of person that loves to kiss behind and loves to play the role like he knows it all, but he really doesn't. And I say that because later on down the line, before Tyler, who's another person that ends up committing self-deletion, Chef Slowick puts Tyler in the kitchen and says, well, for this next course, we're going to have Tyler cook something. And so he, you know, gives him a chef jacket, has him come into the kitchen, you know, has him basically become a part of the team. And he goes, well, everyone be ready to get Chef Tyler with you know, whatever he needs. So Tyler calls out for leeks, he calls out for lamb, and one more ingredient. I think it was just like another style of onion, maybe a white onion. And he begins to start cooking, and I was just like, oh my gosh. Like, from a chef's perspective, I was just sitting there laughing, because I was like, well, see that you are not a real chef And he's like, yes, chef, and like starts crying and whimpering and you know, because like all of this that he had like made up of, you know, this persona and all of this stuff that he's you know made up about himself is just shattered. Lastly, Margot is smart enough to take the picture, take the information from the picture of Chef cooking cheeseburgers when he first started in his career, and this is how she is able to escape and get back on the boat, while everybody else is a jumbo deconstructed s'more and is basically cremated, right? And it's just like, oh my gosh, so crazy. So Margot, you know, had chef make a burger. She tastes it, she's like, this is so good, blah blah, because earlier within the movie she did explain to chef that your food is cold. Even the hot food that comes in is cold because there's no love, there's no passion. And I was like, she's definitely giving it to him. She's no comment. I was like, when she said that the hot food is still cold even though it's hot food, I was like, wow. I said, oh, she got her. I was, you get what I'm saying? That was a jab for sure. And so she tastes the burger. She says, oh my gosh, this is so good. You know, shows the emotion and appreciation for the food, and says to chef, well, can I take this to go? And he says, sure, why not? You know, calls whoever he needs to call, gets a to-go box for her food, her burger and fries, and then she takes it with her, takes her jacket, and she's able to walk out of the restaurant with nobody stopping her, nothing. And that's just basically how the movie ends. So I hope you guys really enjoyed my review of this movie. It is one of the dopest movies that I've seen in a very long time. I guess I'm a little bit biased because I am a chef, and there was a lot of things that I could definitely relate to. But once again, thanks for tuning in to another episode of New York Eats, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Peace out.